For years, my world revolved around the beautiful chaos of a growing family, a life as ordinary and predictable as any other. But then, in the sterile silence of a hospital room, cradling my newborn, everything shattered. One moment I was taking pictures, the next I was falling into a peace so profound it felt more real than reality itself. How could such absolute calm exist amidst total medical pandemonium? And what did that fleeting glimpse beyond life reveal about the true nature of our existence?
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a story that transcends the ordinary. Today, we're honored to share Sandra's incredible near-death experience, a journey from the joy of new motherhood to an unexpected plunge into the luminous unknown. Please subscribe and like this video. And for our first question, have you ever experienced an unexplainable calm during a crisis? And if so, how did it affect you? Share your thoughts below. Now, let's hear Sandra's remarkable story.
For so long, I had simply existed, moving through the motions of life with a quiet desperation, a subtle undercurrent of longing for something more I couldn't quite name. My days were a predictable cycle of responsibility and routine, a comfortable cage I hadn't truly noticed until the bars dissolved. Before everything changed, my life was a tapestry woven from the threads of everyday domesticity. I was a mother, a wife, navigating the joyful chaos of a bustling household. My days were a symphony of school runs, meal preps, and the constant hum of a home filled with children's laughter and demands. We lived in a cozy, slightly cluttered house in a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind where everyone knew everyone else's business, and the biggest drama was usually a lost pet or a neighborhood barbecue. I was, by outward appearances, just Sandra, one of many moms pushing a grocery cart down the aisle, juggling a phone and a toddler. My character, I'd say I was pragmatic, a planner, always trying to stay 2 steps ahead of the next curveball life threw. My routines were my anchors, providing a sense of control in a world that often felt unpredictable. In my rare moments of solitude, I'd immerse myself in true crime podcasts or get lost in a good book, seeking a thrill or an escape from the mundane. There wasn't much room for grand philosophical ponderings in my daily grind. Life was about making it through the day, ensuring everyone was fed, clothed, and reasonably happy. Looking back, my childhood was a mix of sunshine and shadows. I remember long, golden summers spent riding bikes until dusk, the wind whipping through my hair, feeling utterly free. There were also the quieter, more solitary moments where I'd retreat into my own head, observing the world around me with a child's curious yet often anxious eyes. I wasn't particularly religious, though I'd been dragged to church on and off by my grandmother. Those experiences left me with a vague sense of a higher power, but nothing concrete, nothing that truly resonated. Emotionally, I think I lived in a state of quiet acceptance. There was a baseline level of contentment, the simple joys of watching my children grow, the comfort of familiarity, but beneath that surface, if I was honest with myself, there was often a low thrum of dissatisfaction, an unspoken question about the purpose of it all. I wasn't unhappy, not truly, but I wasn't exactly brimming with unbridled joy either. It was more a muted existence, a feeling of being on a conveyor belt, moving steadily forward without much input on the destination. I'd experienced profound loss too, 3 miscarriages that had left deep, unhealed wounds. Each time, a part of me felt a little more broken, a little more resigned to the arbitrary nature of fate. Death to me was simply the end, a void, a finality. I hadn't given it much thought beyond that, beyond the sorrow it brought. I certainly didn't believe in anything more, no grand reunion, no ethereal realms. I was a skeptic, a realist, and that made what was about to happen all the more astonishing. One moment, I was beaming, filled with the boundless joy of new motherhood. taking endless pictures of my perfect baby. The next, a shadow fell across the nurse's face, a look of stark terror that ripped through the quiet joy of the recovery room, signaling that something was terribly, irrevocably wrong. The morning of May 21st, 2009 dawned like any other, or so I thought. The air in hospital room was crisp, clinical, yet it held the faint, sweet scent of new beginnings. I remember the gentle hum of the monitors, the hushed footsteps of nurses in the hallway, all blending into the background music of a day dedicated to my newborn son. My fourth child, a testament to resilience after a pregnancy that had been nothing short of a marathon. I'd spent most of it on strict bed rest, battling early contractions, convinced at times that my body simply wasn't up to the task. But here he was, all 11 pounds, 12 ounces of him, a tiny miracle nestled safely in my arms. The C-section had gone smoothly enough, or so they said. The doctors had even ordered extra blood to be on standby, a precaution they ultimately decided wasn't needed. That detail, I'd later learn, would become terrifyingly significant. The unused blood had been sent back to the blood bank, a seemingly innocuous decision made hours earlier. Now, I was in the recovery room bathed in the soft glow of the early afternoon light filtering through the blinds. My son, this tiny, perfect human, was draped across my chest, his weight a comforting presence. I felt an almost giddy euphoria, the kind only a new mother knows. My phone was in my hand, a flurry of texts and pictures flying out to everyone I knew, proudly announcing the arrival of our newest family member. Each click of the camera, each triumphant message sent, solidified this moment of pure, unadulterated happiness. There was no premonition, no chilling whisper of what to come, no sudden drop in temperature, no unsettling shiver down my spine. The world felt utterly normal, brimming with the promise of a future I was finally ready to embrace. I was tired, yes, but it was the good kind of tired, the exhaustion that comes from bringing new life into the world. Then the nurse entered the room, her movements efficient and practiced as she began my post-op evaluation. She was typing into the computer, asking routine questions about how I felt, my pain level, the usual post-delivery check-in. Her face was calm, professional, her focus on the screen in front of her. The quiet normalcy of the room persisted. And then everything changed. Her eyes flickered from the monitor to me, and in that instant, the calm shattered. Her face, previously neutral, contorted into an expression of sheer, unadulterated terror. It was a look that would forever be seared into my memory, a primal fear that transcended the sterile environment of the hospital. It was a silent scream before the actual sound even escaped her lips. My mind, still swimming in the afterglow of birth, struggled to process the sudden shift. What could possibly evoke such a reaction? Before I could even form the thought, her voice tore through the air, sharp and desperate. "Oh my God, are you okay?" The words hit me like a physical blow, snapping me out of my blissful haze. In that same terrifying breath, I felt my arms, still cradling my son, go completely limp. My muscles, moments ago strong enough to hold the weight of the world, simply gave way, betraying me. My son, my beautiful, perfect boy, began to slide slowly, inexorably down my stomach and into my lap. A silent scream caught in my throat. I couldn't move, couldn't react, couldn't even tighten my grip. It was as if my body had become a stranger, detached and unresponsive. I heard the nurse's frantic cry to her colleague, a desperate plea for help that echoed with urgency. The other nurse, a blur of motion, was suddenly there, swiftly lifting my son from my lap, securing him away from my suddenly failing body. A profound wave of exhaustion,
unlike any fatigue I'd ever known, washed over me. It was a seductive, all-consuming weariness that pulled me under, a sensation of simply falling asleep. But this wasn't the gentle drift into slumber. This was an abrupt, complete cessation of awareness, a sudden plunge into an unknown depth. The chaos of the room, the nurses' frantic voices, the cold fear on their faces, it all faded, replaced by an unsettling yet strangely peaceful emptiness. The last sensation I recall was a profound sense of letting go and surrender to an overwhelming force.
It was beyond white, a room that glowed with its own light, filling me with a peace so profound I still struggle to speak of it without tears welling in my eyes, a sense of being utterly, completely home. In that luminous space, a man smiled, and without a single word conveyed a truth that would forever redefine my understanding of life, death, and everything in between. The moment my physical body slumped, an extraordinary lightness enveloped me. The terror of the nurses, the fading cries for help, all dissolved into a quiet, profound stillness. It wasn't pain, not fear, but an immediate, sudden relief, as if a crushing weight had been lifted. My awareness didn't dim, in fact, it sharpened, becoming incredibly vivid. I didn't see my body from above, but rather I simply lost all sensation of it, the awareness of my physical form evaporating into a vast, unburdened freedom. Then there was the light. It wasn't a light that assaulted the eyes, like staring at a sunbeam or a harsh bulb. No, this light was sentient, emanating from every surface of a room that was beyond white. Imagine the purest, most brilliant white you can conceive, then multiply its intensity 1,000-fold, yet without any blinding glare. It pulsed gently, a living luminescence that seemed to breathe, permeating every fiber of my being. It was the source of its own existence, and simply being bathed in it brought an immediate, overwhelming sense of peace and calm that I had never experienced before nor since. It was a complete absence of anxiety, of worry, of anything resembling earthly strife. In this ethereal space, a figure emerged. He was a man, and though his features weren't sharply defined in a conventional sense, his presence was undeniably real, emanating an aura of pure, unconditional acceptance. He simply smiled, a gentle, knowing smile that radiated profound love. His mouth didn't move, yet his thoughts, his words resonated directly within my consciousness, as clear and distinct as if he were speaking aloud. It was a communication beyond words, a telepathic communion of souls. The first message was simple, yet startling. I had to go back. A fleeting thought of protest, a whisper of confusion stirred within me. Go back? To what? The world I had just left felt chaotic, noisy, heavy. This place, this luminous sanctuary, felt like home. But the man's presence was too comforting, too absolute in its wisdom for doubt to linger. His peace was infectious, overriding any nascent fear or regret. As I began to acclimate to this unparalleled state of being, a profound sense of lightness and freedom washed over me. It was as if every physical limitation I had ever known had simply ceased to exist. I was unburdened, untethered, floating in a realm of pure potential. There was no sense of gravity, no resistance, just effortless being. The contrast to my earthly existence, with its constant demands and physical discomforts, was staggering. This was true freedom, a boundless expansion of consciousness that felt like soaring without wings. The man, still radiating that serene presence, conveyed more. He didn't speak of a life review in the traditional sense, a rapid-fire montage of past events. Instead, his message touched upon the profound connection I had to the world I had left. He gently reminded me of the children I had, the responsibilities I still carried, the life that awaited my return. And then he offered a revelation that pierced the depths of my being, a balm to long-held wounds. He told me he had the children I had lost, my 3 previous miscarriages, those silent sorrows that had haunted me for years, were with him. And one day, he promised, I would see them again. The pain of those losses, which had been a constant ache in my heart, dissolved in that moment, replaced by an overwhelming sense of solace and anticipation. It was a promise, a divine certainty that transcended earthly grief. There was no grand revelation about the meaning of the universe or complex philosophical concepts. Instead, the knowledge imparted was deeply personal, yet universally profound. It was about purpose, about the sacredness of life, about the intricate web of connections that bind us all. I wasn't given a detailed blueprint for my future, but a strong, undeniable sense that there was still work to do, a path yet to unfold. The overwhelming sensation, however, was one of unconditional love. It wasn't a human love with its imperfections and conditions. This was a pure, boundless, all-encompassing love that flowed from the very fabric of this luminous reality, from the man himself. It was the fundamental essence of existence, a unifying force that connected everything. I felt myself dissolving into it, becoming one with this benevolent energy, understanding without needing words that this love was the foundation of all creation. In that space, there was no judgment, no fear, only perfect acceptance and profound compassion. This feeling, more than any specific message, was the core of the experience, a truth so potent it vibrated through my very essence. The thought of returning to the limitations of my physical body felt like an immense sacrifice. Why would I leave this perfection, this peace, this profound sense of belonging? I tried to communicate my desire to stay, to articulate the depth of comfort and joy I felt in this brilliant realm. This was home, I pleaded silently. This is where I truly belonged. The man's smile remained unwavering, his gaze filled with infinite compassion. He reiterated his message, his thoughts flowing into mine with gentle firmness. One day you will be with me, but not now. You have to go back. There was no debate, no argument, just a calm, resolute certainty. It was not my time. My work, whatever it was not yet complete. The knowledge was imparted not as a command, but as a tender, loving truth, guiding me back to the life I was still meant to live.
Suddenly, I was back, not gently, but with a jarring force that slammed me into a world of screaming voices and searing pain, a brutal awakening from profound peace. The stark reality of blood and frantic hands was a horrifying contrast to the luminous calm I'd just known, leaving me disoriented and aching for the serenity I'd lost. The transition back was not a gentle fading, but an abrupt, violent expulsion. One moment I was bathed in that profound, luminous peace, basking in the silent, loving presence of the man in the beyond white room. The next I was hurled back into my body, a sudden, brutal collision with reality. It felt like being dropped from an immense height, slamming into a vessel that was suddenly heavy, painful, and suffocatingly real. The serene silence was replaced by a cacophony of sound, urgent voices, sharp commands, the terrifying thump, thump, thump of fists rhythmically pounding into my abdomen. My first sensation was an overwhelming physical discomfort. The lightness I'd known was gone, replaced by an unbearable heaviness. My stomach felt like it was being crushed, a searing pain radiating outwards, accompanied by a wave of nausea so intense it made my head spin. My eyes snapped open, and the ethereal glow of the other realm was instantly eclipsed by the harsh, fluorescent lights of the hospital room. The scene that greeted me was pure pandemonium. Doctors and nurses swarmed around my bed, their faces etched with frantic urgency. They were shouting. their voices a blurred torrent of medical jargon. "Give her this, more of that, what's her pressure?" I heard the clang of instruments, the rustle of gowns, the sharp scent of antiseptic filling my nostrils. Two doctors, perched on stools next to the bed, were aggressively pushing their fists into my abdomen, trying to stop the flow of blood. It was a raw, visceral spectacle, utterly devoid of the peace I'd just known. Amidst the chaos, a familiar face emerged. To my right, the nurse who had administered my anesthesia during the C-section sat calmly in a chair, her eyes fixed on mine. Her voice, a steady anchor in the storm, cut through the din. "Stay with me. Look at me." Her words were a lifeline, pulling me slightly away from the disorienting shock of re-entry. But the struggle was immense. My body was failing, the pain overwhelming. Despite her calm plea, the blissful darkness called to me again, and I fell back into unconsciousness, seeking the solace of that other realm. I was back in the brilliant room. The same man was there, radiating that incredible peace, and he gently pointed behind me, a clear, unspoken directive to return. I remember a desperate, silent plea rising within me, a fervent desire to stay. This was where I belonged. I knew it. I tried to communicate my longing, my absolute conviction that this was my true home, but even as the thought formed, I was violently tossed back into the earthly room, the jarring transition leaving me gasping.
This time, the chaos was even more intense. The room was a whirlwind of motion, filled with more people, more shouting. I heard someone yell about an emergency hysterectomy kit, words that echoed with chilling finality. A woman near my feet announced, "I'm going to give you a shot in the foot. It might hurt." In my mind, a strange, almost detached thought formed. I have a spinal. I can't feel anything from the waist down. It was a fleeting moment of bizarre lucidity amidst the terror. The anesthesia nurse was closer now, leaning over me, her face inches from mine. "I told you to stay here," she insisted, her voice urgent, almost fierce. "Stay with me." And then a strange, specific detail registered, the distinct smell of onions and garlic on her breath. It was such an odd, mundane detail in such an extraordinary moment, yet it burned itself into my memory. I desperately closed my eyes, willing myself away from the pain and panic. And just like that, I was back in the bright, serene room with the man who had brought me such peace. I implored him again, trying to convey the depth of my yearning to stay, to belong there. I felt a profound sense of home in his presence, a knowing that this was where I should be, always. His reply was gentle but firm, his thoughts resonating within me. "One day you will be with me, but not now. You have to go back." The return was immediate. Doctors were rolling me onto my side, trying to replace the blood-soaked pads beneath me. I could feel the shocking cold and the horrifying wetness of blood gushing from my body, running off the bed, a torrent escaping me. The sheer volume was terrifying. I closed my eyes again, a desperate, almost instinctual act of surrender. And once more, I was with him, the mysterious man, enveloped in that unparalleled calm. This time, his message was concise, a gentle but absolute command that permeated my very essence. No, go back. There was no room for debate, no further explanation needed. It was simply the truth. The final return was less jarring, a more gradual re-entry, though still marked by profound weakness. I slowly became aware of my physical body again, the discomfort, the cold, the dim light of the recovery room. I heard the faint gasp from the nurse who was removing the leads from my chest. She looked at me, her eyes wide with surprise, and whispered, "Are you still with us?" My voice was a dry, rasping whisper, but I managed to say, "Yes." The memory of the subsequent hours is hazy, a fragmented series of sensations. I remember the pervasive cold, a deep chill that made me shiver uncontrollably. When I next truly awoke, a sharp, burning pain in my left arm registered. I now had 2 IVs,
One dripped clear fluid, the other thick, dark red blood. I saw a nurse sitting quietly at a table across the room, the only light coming from a small lamp as she filled out paperwork. I made a faint sound, and she came to my bedside. I told her about the burning cold in my arm. Her face registered a moment of realization. She had forgotten to put the blood tube through the warmer. Later, I was told the staggering truth. I had received 6 bags of blood. My hemoglobin, which had been a healthy 13.8 when I arrived, had plummeted to 8.2 even after all that transfusion. The doctors confirmed I had lost more of my own blood than most people even had in their entire body. They called it a miracle, but they didn't know the half of it.
Before, I lived in a quiet resignation, merely existing. Now, every breath is a testament to a profound truth revealed in that luminous room. Death isn't an end, but a transition. And because of it, I am no longer afraid, ready to face whatever life and beyond holds. The days immediately following my experience were a blur of recovery, marked by the constant hum of machines and the subtle shift in the attitudes of the hospital staff. On my last day, my C-section doctor came into my room, a look of cautious relief on her face. She was happy to see me awake. When she asked if I remembered her, I told her I remembered everything. Her response was immediate, dismissive even. That's impossible. You didn't have enough blood in your brain to retain memory. It was a clinical, rational explanation, perfectly logical to her, but logic, I knew, had no place in what I had experienced. I simply replied, "The anesthesia nurse had garlic and onions for lunch." The doctor gave me a strange look, a flicker of confusion crossing her features before she left the room. A few minutes later, she returned, a different expression on her face, one of genuine surprise. "How did you know that particular nurse had spaghetti and garlic bread for lunch that day?" she asked, her voice tinged with incredulity. I simply reiterated, calmly, "I remember everything." I knew then, with absolute certainty, that no one could ever take this experience from me. It was mine, undeniable and utterly real. My life after that day was irrevocably changed. The woman who returned to that suburban home was not the same one who had left. My priorities shifted dramatically. The mundane anxieties, the small frustrations that once consumed me now seemed trivial, almost absurd. The constant striving for material possessions, the societal pressures to conform, they lost their grip entirely. What mattered was no longer what I owned, but how I loved, how I connected, and how I lived. I acquired a profound appreciation for every single moment, every sunrise, every laugh shared with my children. Life, once a routine, became a precious gift. My relationships transformed as well. The most significant change was the dissolution of my marriage. My ex-husband simply couldn't grasp what I had been through. He didn't believe me, often making light of my story, even mocking it. How could he? It was an experience beyond earthly comprehension. But his inability to even try to understand, to validate the most profound event of my life, created an unbridgeable chasm between us. I realized I needed to live authentically, in alignment with the truths I had been shown, and that meant moving forward on my own path. My worldview underwent a complete metamorphosis. Before, I was agnostic, a spiritual wanderer, occasionally dabbling in faith but never truly committing. Death was the end, a cold, dark void. Now I am a fervent Christian. The man in that luminous room, who radiated such boundless love and peace, I believe was Jesus. The absolute certainty of his presence, the telepathic communication, the feeling of home, it all solidified my belief in a loving, supreme being. My understanding of existence expanded beyond the physical realm. I now believe that life has a profound purpose, even if the specific details of my own work remain somewhat veiled. I know that consciousness transcends the body.
that death is merely a transition, not an annihilation. I gained a deep understanding of the afterlife, not as a distant concept, but as a tangible reality where I will one day be reunited with my lost children. This isn't just a belief, it's a knowing. This profound shift propelled me towards a new mission. I've become more involved in my church, seeking to understand and deepen my spiritual connection. More importantly, I feel a quiet compulsion to share my story, not to preach, but to offer hope. When friends or family face the agonizing pain of loss, I can speak from a place of certain knowledge. I can tell them, with absolute conviction, that their loved ones are not simply gone. This experience has granted me an incredible ability to cope with grief, a strength I never knew I possessed. Since 2009, I've lost an average of one person every 6 months, a truly staggering amount of loss, including my own brother to suicide just over a year after my experience. This journey, I believe, happened precisely so I could endure these trials, so I could stand as a beacon of comfort for others. Integrating such an otherworldly experience into everyday life has not been without its challenges. There's the inherent misunderstanding from those who haven't walked this path, the blank stares, the polite nods, the subtle attempts to rationalize it away as a hallucination or a dream. It can be isolating to carry such a profound truth when others are unable to see it. There are moments when the sheer normalcy of the world feels jarring, a stark contrast to the heightened reality I once glimpsed. But these difficulties are minor compared to the peace and purpose I gained. The most profound lesson I carried back from the gates of the unknown is this: do not fear death. Before, I harbored a quiet longing to escape life's burdens, even flirting with self-destructive thoughts rooted in depression. Now, that desire is entirely gone. I wouldn't seek death, but I am no longer afraid of it. I know with every fiber of my being that when my time comes, I will return to that boundless peace, to that loving presence, and to my children who await me. The experience gifted me an inner calm, a resilience against the anxieties and stresses of daily life that were once so overwhelming. My message to you, to anyone listening, is this: there is more to existence than meets the eye. There is a profound, unconditional love at the heart of everything, a peace beyond earthly comprehension. Even when life feels dark, even when loss seems unbearable, know that there is a purpose, a connection, and a homecoming that awaits us all. Your life, right now, is a precious opportunity, a sacred journey. Embrace it, live it fully, and know that you are loved beyond measure. The veil between worlds is thinner than you think, and what lies beyond is not to be feared, but embraced, when it is your time.
Sandra's journey is a powerful testament to the transformative potential of a near-death experience, offering profound insights into the nature of love, loss, and the afterlife. Her unwavering conviction, especially after that remarkable garlic bread detail, makes her story truly compelling. If Sandra's story has resonated with you, please consider supporting our channel by liking this video and subscribing for more narratives that explore the deepest mysteries of existence. And for our final question, Sandra found comfort in the knowledge of her lost children being with the benevolent figure. How does the idea of being reunited with loved ones beyond this life impact your own sense of peace or hope? May God bless you and fill your days with peace, understanding, and the radiant light of His eternal love. Until next time, keep exploring the wonders of creation.